everybody. Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. In today's episode, I'm talking with Joshua Marsella. I've shared some content from him before. He's a horror author that I recently found on Twitter, not that long ago. His first book was called Scratches. He has the second, which is actually a prequel to that one, called Severed. And then we're going to actually talk a little bit at the end of the video about a new one that comes out at the end of November. But we're going to talk to Joshua today about his top 5 influential horror picks and why he chose them. So we can kind of start wherever you want to start. We're going to go in order of year, right?
Yeah. I picked from my first one, Pet Semetary from 1989, which going back, it's probably one of the earliest movies that I remember watching. I know one of the first ones I remember watching was Child's Play, which was also, I think, the same year it came out, something like that. But I remember seeing Pet Semetary on TV a lot when I was growing up and stuff, and it absolutely terrified me. And it's one of those movies that just really stuck with me. There's so many iconic scenes, so I thought I'd start with that one because it really did make an impact on me.
Yeah, I think I had an older sister that kind of had to sneak those movies for me. So like a lot of that stuff, I didn't get exposure to until like it had already been out for a little bit. So like I always talk about like my first memory of life is Poltergeist, because that's like the first horror movie that I ever saw. But Pet Semetary is a very close one too, because my sister was super into Stephen King. So she introduced me to a lot of his stuff. And that movie was pretty terrifying. I still, to this day, that scene where she's in the house and I guess it's supposed to be kind of like this weird moment for her, but she sees her sister like on the floor and she's like moving. That part it was like so unsettling to me. The movements, the way like she's so sunken in from being sick, and that part always freaked me out. Like probably the scariest part to me was actually that part of the movie. It freaked me out pretty bad. So
yeah, absolutely. The Zelda scenes are extremely traumatizing, especially for young kids. And that's one of the things that really stuck with me too. And I was really surprised to find out that it was actually played by a man.
Right.
That part, which really blew my mind. But yeah, that was very traumatizing. And I actually remember, because I'm from Maine, I grew up in Maine, but I didn't know. I can't remember when I found out Stephen King was actually from Maine, because that was a pretty big deal, because he was like everywhere in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
And I remember the commercial advertising the book, which I think the book and the movie came out I can't remember when the book came out, but it might have been the movie, because it was showing the scene of him walking through the house, and it was like morphing with like green like moss hanging off it, and which wasn't actually in the book, but it was a really cool like feature that they added into the movie, and it made for great like commercial advertisement type deal. And I could still remember to this day seeing that on like, I think it was like TNT or USA. It was like one of those cable channels where those movies were constantly like
always on.
Yeah, his movies were always on.
So what's your number 2?
I believe at this point it is Jacob's Ladder, which that was 1990.
Yeah.
This was one that caught me by surprise. I first saw it when I was in Kurdistan, which is northern Iraq. My squad leader, he told me about it, and I think he must have had like a bootleg DVD or something. He's like, "You need to watch this," because I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
And this was around like 2003 or four probably, and it was a trip. It's for anyone who hasn't seen it before, it's a soldier in Vietnam he's fighting in the jungle with his squad, and basically they're given these experimental psychedelic drugs basically that kind of turn them into mindless super soldiers, and it kind of goes from there, and then he eventually goes home, and starts experiencing all these weird things, seeing these weird creatures and stuff coming around. And um, it deals a lot with like PTSD, and there's a lot of like really under, what do you call it? Like messages that are coming, like themes that are underlying themes that like
Yeah.
PTSD, trauma, stuff like that. And yeah, and the thing I think that deters people from wanting to watch it is when you first turn it on, it looks like it's a war movie and it
Yeah.
takes place in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I've kind of experienced that with my prequel book, Severed, which it's a direct prequel. It directly ties into the first book, which a lot of people loved, but it takes place during a war, and a lot of people aren't as quick to jump into that because they are afraid, like, okay, we're just going to deal with a war story here.
Yeah.
But you realize quickly once you get into it a little ways, it actually deals with his experience after. It deals with a lot of flashbacks and that chaotic situation that he's going through while he's back in the regular world is what a lot of guys with PTSD and stuff deal with. They deal with like constant, like, this constant influx of thoughts and emotions, and it's chaotic. And especially guys that are really in it deep, and not only that, like dreams, he's always waking up from dreams, sweating and stuff. And so that was why it really stuck with me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And I was just really impressed, really overall, with the production and where it took us as the viewer.
Yeah. No, I
there's
agree.
really nothing else much like it out there, as far as like straight up horror movies.
No.
So
Yeah, definitely nothing that I've seen. I think and I don't have like the close ties for the military side of things. I mean, like my husband was in the military when we first started dating, but he had been in it for so long. Like he enlisted when he was 17. And he never tried, he didn't go anywhere. So he just kind of got out of the army eventually. When his time came, he just got out. So I didn't have to deal with like this weird moving thing that I know some families, and he didn't have anything to come back from like that. But my best friend's brother was a Marine, and he's still alive, but he was in a Humvee that got blown up. And I remember, when he came back, because our families are just like, we're so close. When he came back, there were a lot of things for years. Like, I mean, it took so long to even get back to any semblance of who he was. And he's still not who he was,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't have like a direct connection, but I do think about things like that. And it's funny that you mentioned like kind of being turned off by it being like a military thing, and maybe thinking like, oh, I don't want to watch this military story, because I don't watch a lot of military movies. Typically if I start watching them, I'll sit through them, but I'm not going to like sign up to watch them. But I will say, when I started Severed, I think if I had started it not having read Scratches, not interacting with you, not seeing your like some of the other stuff that you've talked about, like I don't know that I would have made it through it either, for that very reason. And now I feel dumb for saying that, because now I'm like, I haven't finished it yet, but I am working on it. And it's like I've really liked what I've seen of it so far, and it does feel very real, like the interactions that you have between the guys and stuff. So it's funny that you say that, because that's probably who I am. Like normally somebody like wouldn't even read that or consider it, and I did have that thought. I was like, is this going to be like a whole military movie? But then once, I mean, it doesn't take very long to kind of like really get going, so
yeah,
it kept me intrigued.
Yeah, no, and that's something that I had to take into consideration, and that whole storyline with George and his past and everything, that wasn't anything I had ever expected to write in Scratches. It kind of just came out when I wrote it.
Right.
So once people read Scratches and really liked it and was like, okay, so when's the next book?
More.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah,
it was like, okay, now I had this like prequel story basically in the story all ready to go. I just had to write it. And
right.
that's kind of where it came from. And I knew it was going to be a hard sell to a lot of people who liked Scratches, because it was like,
Such a different,
such a totally different thing, even though it does directly tie in at the end.
right.
And so, that's what happened with that. But same thing with Jacob's Ladder. If you've never seen it, I definitely give it a shot. It's not just a war story, and it's definitely pretty deep. So and there's a
Yeah.
lot of horror and a lot of scares in it. If you like Silent Hill, it's you
Yeah,
know,
there's some. Yeah, you're
definitely.
definitely uncomfortable a lot. Like I felt
Yeah.
uncomfortable a lot. And I had to kind of watch the end of it on this is so annoying. I had to watch the end of it. I was so close. I had like 20 minutes left. I had to watch the end of it on my phone because my toddler runs our house. And so I was like watching it on this like tiny screen,
Yeah.
like determined. I was like, I have to know how this movie ends. I didn't.
That's how I watch most of my stuff
Oh,
anyway.
you have to get used to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I'm pretty well used to it now with my kids and stuff. And
Right.
so that's how it goes.
Yeah, that's true. But I got through it and
Yeah.
it was, I would say I would recommend it too. I think it's definitely something for people who like watching horror that's outside of the norm because it
Hmm.
definitely doesn't fit into like I don't know that you could fit this into just like a subgenre. Like it's definitely not a slasher. It's definitely not like, and I think that
Yeah.
that actually makes it even like it just adds value, I think.
Yeah.
When it's like, I don't know what this is, it's in miscellaneous. So
I think psychological, what you called it a little
it's
while ago, I
probably
think
the
that's,
closest. Yeah.
yeah, that's about as close as you can get.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Hmm.
All right. What's our number 3?
I believe that is Lake
Oh,
Mungo.
I like this one. Okay.
Yeah. So this is it's not a lot of people call it found footage. It's not
Right.
found footage. It's kind of like a fake documentary. And the
Right.
thing that really shines in this is the acting. It feels real. You
Very
don't know
real.
any of these actors. It's unlike really anything you've ever seen before. And it what it is the story about a family, a mother, father, son, and daughter. And they basically, the daughter goes swimming with, I think it's the brother, and
Yeah.
she goes swimming and they both jump in, and then the daughter just doesn't come back up. And she basically, like, there's a nearby dam and she doesn't get back up. And a few days later, after searching and searching, they find her body. And it's very much a ghost story. It deals with the trauma that the family is going through.
Yeah.
The brother is struggling to deal with his parents who are in mourning. So he takes like he does some certain things that at first seem kind of like shady and wrong,
Right.
but then you can kind of see where he's coming from, to try to help give his family some closure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a grief horror, but the way they handle it is just absolutely brilliant. It keeps you guessing, like it takes so many twists and turns,
Yeah.
and you just don't know where this thing is going to end. And without spoiling anything, it ends beautifully, and it gives me chills. I've seen it probably, I don't know, close to 10 times at this point.
Oh,
um yeah, and it just like, there's some end credit scenes that, if when you watch this movie, you definitely got to watch those, because they will give you the friggin'
they
goosebumps like
make it
crazy.
worse.
Yeah. But I just think it was like groundbreaking. It came out in 2008, and I
Yeah.
didn't even see it until like maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like talking about it.
I noticed that it was very weird. I feel like
Yeah.
right after you had said it, and I had never heard of it.
Hmm.
I did. It did seem like all of a sudden there was people watching it because I know you had shared some stuff of other people talking about it too.
Yep.
Which I mean, I agree. I think like that was one of the things when I was like really thinking about what I loved about, because I think out of the ones that I watched that were ones that I'd not seen that you liked was
Hmm.
I like this was probably my favorite one. I
Hmm.
really liked it. And it was hard to say why at first. And so I really had to like really think about what it was that I liked. And I think that I know some people get very bored with this, but I really like things that are about people
Hmm.
because people experience and have horrific things happen in their life. And real horror to me is like on a whole nother level than like fake horror. And I
Yeah.
think that because this felt so real because of the way that it's filmed, I think, like you said, you don't know who any of the people are. It's not like it had these big names. I think that really drives home. Like I felt like I was in mourning with this family. Like it was a
Yeah.
very interesting emotional ride. And I was actually really happy with it. I was a little nervous that the ending was going to be disappointing, but I didn't feel that way. I felt really satisfied with it. But I thought it was really, really well done and surprising. I'd never heard of it.
But yeah, it's just one of those movies that really sticks with you, and I can't recommend it enough. And I'm like thinking about all the movies I picked, and I'm like, they're not like your typical like slasher, or like they're
No.
all like emotionally heavy or psychological, and I'm like, damn, like the movies I really like are like, might as well like be like a mental health patient, like watching all these films or something.
I did say that actually. I was talking to my editor about this video and like the movies and just kind of talking, I was like, they're all pretty obscure, I think, as
Yeah.
far as like what they're, but I actually really like that. I think, because first of all, like I love finding new stuff that I've never seen before, especially stuff that's a little different, because you see the same stuff over and over, it just kind of gets redundant. But yeah, I'm laughing because like that's exactly what I thought. I was like, these are all very different. Like,
Yeah.
they're not like your typical go-to, like, and then it made me think about the ones that I did. I'm like, now I feel like I need to redo my list. Like,
yeah. Well, these are just like a lot of, I mean, some of them are like like I think Pet Semetary was one of the ones that's like ingrained in my DNA at this point.
sure.
But like a lot of them are the ones I found later on in life. Like I think
Yeah.
Jacob's Ladder was one I found in like my early 20s, and then the other three are just recent. Like I think The Witch was what, 20 a couple years ago, and then so they're all kind of like more recent. And even though like Mungo was older in 2008, I didn't even find it until like maybe 2 years ago. So they're great. They're great movies. If you haven't seen Lake Mungo, check it out. I think it takes place in Australia, which I think is where Lake Mungo is.
Yeah, I think that's
and
right.
so that's kind of neat. It's kind of cool. But yeah, the actors did an amazing job. They're so
They did.
raw. It just felt real. Everything felt
It
real
did.
about it. Yeah,
It really did. I was definitely blown away. It really was. I'm trying to think if I had to rent that one. I feel like it was on something though.
I think it's on
Amazon.
Prime.
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon.
Yeah.
I rented Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah. I think
And
that was one of the only ones you had to rent, I believe. I
I think
hope.
so, because the Wailing is on Prime.
That one's been on Prime. Yeah, it's been on a couple different
I
ones.
can't. Yeah, but yeah, I think you're right. I think Jacob's Ladder was the only one I had to rent.
Yeah.
I think so. But yeah, what's
Awesome.
what we got for number 4? I think I know based on the order of the years.
Yeah, so I think that one is The Witch.
Okay.
Your favorite. So this is 2015. I saw it in the theater. I believe it's A24, which is your favorite production company. No. So
It's such a good relationship, A24 and I.
So this one is for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's about a family of, I think they're like Protestants or something. They're extremely religious.
Yeah.
It takes place in like 17th century or 18th century. And, they're basically kicked out of the little settlement that they're in. And I can't remember off the top of my head why they're kicked out, but they either have to do something or they have to leave the settlement. And they decide to leave and kind of like go out into the wilderness and do their own thing. And shit just hits the fan from there. And
oh my God. Yeah, it does.
It's one of those, it's a period piece, and the dialogue is very intense. I highly recommend watching it with subtitles because it's almost like a foreign language. It's
hard to understand.
Yeah, it's like old English.
Yeah.
And I mean, the acting is superb. Like the way they're able to, from the youngest kid to the older guy, they all do an amazing job. And it's one of those ones that it plays tricks on your mind. You feel like there's this witch in the woods that ends up stealing, like kidnaps their baby, right out of the blue, like right in front of the daughter. But she doesn't even see it, and that things start to spiral from there.
Yeah.
They start to notice like their crops won't grow, and all these things start happening, and their sanity starts to chip away little by little. And I just liked it because it was very layered. It was like, and I can understand why a lot of people like yourself don't really care for it, because it's
Yeah.
so it's hard to like really understand what like they're talking about. Like the dialogue is so like kind of like, wherefore art thou, like, and it's like this, it's almost like they're trying too hard, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like it's impressive for that as well, because
Yeah. No, I can
like
agree with
the
that.
way the kids had to learn all that stuff um and speak it properly was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I think it's just, I think that for me it was just so like effective, because I love those period pieces, kind of like the Crucible
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's very early on in our nation's history. Things were not, like it's so dark because the whole ultra religious aspects of it, and the fact that like, they were able to just like murder people because they thought they were witches, or
Right.
that type of stuff to me. Like my wife just went to Salem recently, just last weekend, to kind of like check out the,
Yeah.
the sites and the tours and
Oh,
stuff.
that's
And
neat. Yeah.
it's funny how it turned into like this big tourism site about
Oh,
witches and
right.
horror, when the whole story itself is just, it's just, it was a big sham. It was a big like,
Yeah.
a bunch of people basically making stuff up. And
Yep.
but it's still so interesting that actually happened. Like actually, like people actually thought
Yeah.
these people were witches because of their religious convictions and stuff. And
Yep.
yeah, I don't know why it was so effective to me. Like I said, I saw it in the theater when it first came out. The music was almost too much. But as I say that, I actually listen to that soundtrack a lot when I write, because it's like ambient and kind of like, spooky. And
Yeah. I can see that.
but yeah, I don't know, it's so effective for me. But I can definitely see why a lot, some people wouldn't like it. Yeah, what were your thoughts on it?
So I will say this. I watch Dead Meat is a YouTube channel that I follow, and he does kill counts on horror movies. But he does them in this really fun, kind of energetic, unique way. He's blown up a lot, like not that long ago. I was so green. He did like he just did an interview with John Carpenter and Green, the guy that just did the new Halloween movie.
Oh, David Gordon Green.
Gordon Green, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like you started out doing horror kill counts? That's amazing. But so he did a kill count on The Witch. And I remember I was like, I should watch that because I didn't finish it. And so I watched it, and he talks about like, facts about the movies, kind of like some background stuff about things that he learned. And he does a little bit more than just the kill counts, but he basically goes through the entire story. So full of spoilers. But he talks through like different things. Like one of the things that I think is really neat about this movie that I didn't know prior to watching the kill count is that all of the lighting is period correct lighting. They didn't use any special equipment for lighting because they wanted it to be as authentic in appearance as it could be. And that had to be such a pain in the ass. Like I can't even imagine having to do, because some of those scenes are at night and they're outside, and like I just feel like that's pretty impressive. So that kind of like started my like thinking about the film in a little bit of a different light.
Someday get around to finishing The Witch, and you may hate it, you may like it, but at least you can say you finished it.
I know. And I do. And I feel like I do feel like, because I do know that I like the ending, I think maybe it would have been one of those things like where I would have maybe felt like it had a payoff. Cause
Yeah.
I can deal with like those questionable things of like, I don't know if I like this. Am I going to like this? And then I get to the end and I'm like, okay, that was worth the, like, however long it took
Yeah.
to get to this point. I don't know in the moment if I would have felt that way, but I feel like now I at least know that there was a lot put into that movie. It
Hmm.
definitely was not this just like thrown together thing, especially
Yeah.
with trying to make it be authentic. So, and like I said, I can absolutely appreciate that, and it does add value to a film to know that
Hmm.
that kind of effort and passion and drive like went into making it something more than just like a weird horror movie, I guess.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones that you feel like it's very ambiguous, and like it gives you hints, and it like
Yeah,
shows you this witch,
and
but then you don't see anything for a long time, and you just
oh,
feel like, okay, is this family just going nuts? But
crazy. I had
then
that same thought. Yeah,
yeah, and then it does take a turn right towards the end that kind of like took me by surprise.
yeah.
And um yeah, it's definitely worth finishing. And then you can like say, okay, that was dumb, I didn't care for it. But odds are, if you did find out the ending and you liked it, you may like how it gets to that point. So
Right.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take us to our fifth one.
Yeah, so The Wailing, 2018, I
Yeah.
think it was.
Yep.
Another one that I've discovered through Ryan Hollinger. And this one is kind of unique. I think it's Korean,
Yep.
and it deals with many themes. So there's a Japanese guy that is kind of like living in this community, and these things start happening where these people start getting afflicted with this like bizarre like illness, and no one knows what it is. But it's kind of like a police procedural movie for a long time. And there's like the main character, he's a police officer who just doesn't have his shit together. He's like a horrible cop, and but
Yeah.
he keeps seeing all these things happening around him, and then his daughter is suddenly afflicted with this illness. And
Right.
so he starts really taking things seriously.
Yeah.
And it took me by surprise. It was this a lot of like creepy scenes, a lot of like gory body horror scenes.
Hmm.
There's a lot of like occult witchcrafty type scenes.
Yeah. A
It
lot of
Yeah, it
religious
was.
tones. A
Yeah.
lot of religious
um
tones.
and I also felt like it was almost like diving into the like themes of like prejudice, like because there's this one
Right.
Japanese guy,
And everybody's
and
so sure.
yeah, everyone's
Yeah.
like assuming this is the guy getting everyone sick, and he's like the devil. But then there's also this mysterious figure, this woman in white that appears.
Yeah.
So it's one of those ones that it's long. It's like a over 2 hour long movie, and
Yeah. It is a
it
long one.
and I wasn't expecting that. Um, but it plays games with your mind, and it kind of you think you know what's going on, but then it like takes a turn,
Yeah.
and then it
Oh, yeah.
so it was a lot of cool elements for horror lovers, and it just really
Yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of amazing uh horror coming out of Korea over
Oh
the
my
past few
gosh.
years. I think they're going to be like the next, because it's just they're so dark, and
It
they
takes it
just
places that like our horror just won't go. Like
yeah,
that's how I felt about that the Asylum movie, Ganjiam Asylum or whatever.
yeah,
That's a Korean found footage movie.
it
That movie
is.
blew me away. But I mean, and The Wailing actually did too, because I when I started it, I did not realize it was that long. So I ended up having to split it up into 2 days because I started it kind of late in the night.
Yeah.
But I think like I just didn't understand, like for the first part, this was another one that it took me about like halfway to really decide if I was into it or not. Probably mostly because it was kind of a longer film, but yeah, I thought my favorite theme that it did was the religious themes, because
Mhm.
what's interesting about it is that it's actually written by a very Christian man,
Hmm.
and you may not realize that when you're watching it, because there are things that happen, particularly at the end, where you're like, you actually almost feel like it's kind of like anti-religion, that it's like on the other side, like kind of sacrilege about like just some of the themes. But I really liked those parts. Of course, I like anything that's like witchy, culty, like religious stuff, like anything like that is like
Hmm.
super up my alley. And I once it started kind of getting into that, I was like, okay, this is definitely something that I can like get behind. And I actually really liked it. And I'm like a big fan of like endings that don't necessarily bring you closure. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with endings that aren't happy. And I feel like this ending is just one of those endings that like I just thought was really well done. Like it had these
Yeah.
these moments of like you said, like you think you know what's going on, but then you really have no idea. And it took like it went back and forth a bunch of times about what you thought you knew versus what was actually going on, all the way to the end. And then at the end, you're like, damn, like you thought you knew this whole time and it wasn't quite what you thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Wailing. So
Sorry.
if you've never seen it,
You should watch that. No, that one was
it's
good.
it'll send you down a rabbit hole of all kinds of different movies. But no,
I was trying to
and
think of what was it on? I was gonna look because I feel like I watched it on The Wailing. I'm trying to remember what I watched it on. The Wailing.
yeah,
Tubi. I watched it on Tubi
Tubi. Yeah. Okay.
because you can watch it, for free.
Yeah.
And then it's on
And
some other stuff, but
Gunjiam, the Asylum,
yes,
which which is the one that led us into the conversation. That one is on Prime, I believe. But
yeah,
if you just most of these movies, if you just Google them,
it'll tell you where they're
it'll show
streaming.
you where they're available. Some will
Yeah.
say like subscription, or some will
Mm,
say
what do you need?
free
Or
on Tubi. Yeah,
free. That's
yeah.
true.
So
Yeah,
definitely
I did
check
I
them
did
out.
really like The Wailing. I liked the way it ended. I liked the twists and turns of like getting to the ending. I
Hmm.
don't know. And then because I've watched those, now I'm seeing advertisements for other Korean horror movies, and I'm like taking screenshots and like saving them so that I can go back and
Yeah,
watch them, just because I guess Facebook and everything listens. I don't know, but it's just like it always so weird how that kind of stuff like shows up.
yeah. It's the one
Um
time I want them to actually pay attention to what I'm looking at. It's like, it's like I'll look up like toilet paper on Amazon, and then you get like 27 ads for toilet paper on Facebook. But it's like, if you can like uh recommend more Korean footage movies for me, or Korean movies, that is all I care about. Just do that instead of like toilet paper and socks and
oh my god, I know. When I got the Vans horror shoes, every time I open Google or go into anything now, everything is like Vans shoes. I'm like, I don't buy them regularly. I just
I
wanted the
know.
horror ones. Like, leave me alone.
No, I understand. It's creepy, but that's the one time it's like, when you're a horror fan, I get a lot of ads for like cool horror sculptures and stuff, which is nice, but
Yeah.
sometimes you get some weird stuff. It's like, no, I don't want a Jack Torrance G-string. Thank you.
Pass on that one. Maybe
Pass
next
on
time.
that. Thank you. A few years maybe.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fun conversation about horror movies.
Yeah.
I think it's always fun. Like I said, I know I said this earlier. It might have been before I hit record. I just I like talking about the horror things that like movies and stuff that kind of impact what people look for.
Yeah.
And I think specifically, because you write it, that's always interesting to me too. Because there were moments like when I was reading scratches where I felt like there were some of these things that felt, and I think I said this because I'm pretty sure I wrote a review. I did on Amazon. I like one of the things I felt like I really liked about it was there were all these little like nuances of things that felt super familiar to me. So like the
Mhm.
basement thing actually reminded me a lot of haunting in Connecticut.
Yeah.
If they were
Yeah.
similar, there's just like, but it's not the same thing. It's just that there were these moments of familiarity. And then I felt like the rug got kind of pulled out from under my feet and it was like something totally different. And it went a totally different direction. Which I actually really liked. And I think I don't remember if this was one of your like biggest fans, I think, follows me on Facebook, because anytime I share anything of yours, she's like, she loves to interact and talk about it. And so like she had said, one of the things that I think she had said, or maybe I think it was her, was talking about how like Severed is so it's almost like somebody else wrote it. I think it was her that said that. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, but and I was like, that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And then when I started reading it, I was like, oh, I see. And it's interesting to go from reading Scratches being the way that it was written to this one. It is very different. It's like a big jump of, I don't know. I don't want to say like, I don't know. Like it's just very different. It does feel like someone else.
I've been listening to the audiobook for Scratches, because Scratches was like basically like, okay, hey, I'm going to write something and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just going to do it and I want something to do. So that's Scratches. And then I was like, okay, I have a book, like I can publish this thing. So I published it. People were actually reading it and they were reviewing it. And then I was like, maybe I could do this like writing thing. So when people said they wanted more story, I actually had written just a handful of short stories in between Scratches and Severed. One of them is about a ghost ship that is coming out in an anthology with a bunch of awesome authors on November 17th. And it's actually one of my favorite short stories. And then I finally jumped into Severed and started writing it. And it was like, even that first short story about the ghost ship was like a completely different writer. And even like a lot of people say, like, even like halfway through Scratches, because I've listened to Scratches or read through it a bunch of times. And I'm like, especially now, I'm like, damn, I would have never written that the way I wrote it, or the wording and things like that. But every author is like that with their first piece of work. They're always like, you could change something so many times, you could rewrite it, and it's always going to be different. But sometimes you just have to let things go and let them stay what they are. And so that's what I've done. I've accepted the way it is, and people still enjoy it. And then they read my other work and they're like, okay, this guy has stepped up his game. And that's the same thing with my collection. It's very different styles of writing for each story, different themes. None of them are even like close to the same thing. And so, and like with the story I'm writing now, it's actually for an anthology and it's directly connected to that ghost ship story. And I like doing that type of thing. Like Stephen King has his own little universe. I like to do the same thing with my stories. And to tell, it's almost like telling a story from a different angle, or adding to the lore of that story. I really enjoy that. And so there's actually stories in my collection that are directly connected to Scratches. And even my Fright Vision book has a direct connection to Scratches, even though it's a middle grade book. So it's kind of cool. Like, I like doing that kind of thing. And I definitely feel like I've taken it more seriously now, whereas Scratches was like a one and done. I'm going to just write this, see if anyone even reads it. And then no confidence in myself at all. And then finally, like, okay, people like it. And so I'm going to start like stepping up my game. And I could immediately tell with Severed, like it does feel like a different writer, because
it does.
It's, I put a lot more heart and soul into it. I really put a lot more time into it. So I'm glad people notice it. And a lot of people do, like when they actually read it and they realize it's not like a war story. It's really horror. And I like the fact that people are picking up on that. It makes me feel good. Definitely.
So your collection is called Hunger for Death. And that comes out November 30th. And it's going to be Kindle.
It's going to be everything. I'm hoping I'm hoping to do ebook, paperback, hardcover, and
Okay.
I'm even hoping to get it on some shelves, like Barnes and Noble and places like that. And I'll see,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard because it'll be on the Barnes and Noble website, but to get it in the store, you actually have to like go there and call. So it'll mostly be like on the shelves, hopefully locally in Maine, a couple different
Right.
bookstores. But
Still, yeah.
yeah, I'm shooting for wider distribution.
Right.
So, but yeah, it'll be available in all formats, and hopefully eventually I'll get it in a audiobook,
Okay.
which right now Scratches and Severed are both almost done, and almost ready to go out as audiobooks. Those are both have been in the works, so
Okay.
so that'll be cool. But yeah, it's 13 stories that I've been writing since right after I wrote Scratches,
Okay.
and it's a cool collection. They're all very different. Some of them are like emotional, some of them are just fun, some of them are creepy,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of themes in there that they're all different. And yeah, I had a great time writing it. It was definitely like over a year's worth of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a great time writing it, and I'm glad it's finally going to see the light of day. I was originally going to publish through a publisher, and they unfortunately decided to shut down a couple weeks ago. So
Right.
luckily they released me and actually gave me the amazing cover art. So I've
That's
since
nice.
like
Yeah.
literally since that day, I got the news. I've been working to get this thing out and get it better than ever, and I'm excited for it. I'm hoping
Yeah.
people started having some fun today, like making little ads and promotional videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Corny as hell, just to be funny. I don't take myself too serious.
No, I thought it was really funny. I actually showed a coworker of mine and she's like dying laughing. She's like, that's
Yeah,
hysterical.
my wife's
Yeah.
like, "Did you post that?" And I'm like, "Of course I did. What do you
Of
think?"
course.
She's like, "People, it's funny because people that don't know you are gonna think you were being like dead serious."
Oh,
Like that's the funny part, is like
that
people
is
don't know if I'm
funny.
being serious or not.
Well, and I think either way, it leaves an impression, which to be memorable could mean,
Yeah. And I wrote like a blurb. I'm like, my first blurb came in and it was me blurbing my own book, and people like, I'm buying this now just because of that. You know what I mean? And you never know
Yeah,
like how you're gonna sell a book to people if you take
that's
yourself too
true.
seriously, or if you like to have fun. And that's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm at. But no,
Yeah.
I hope people really like it. I hope people pick it up. And
Yeah. I'm excited.
it's available for pre-order right now for the ebook. And then as soon as November 30th hits, uh, hopefully the other versions will be available. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
excited.
I'm gonna get probably the paper. I have like a I don't know. I need to get over it because there's a lot of really good horror stuff that's only available on Kindle, but I prefer
Mhm.
to have like a physical book.
Yeah. Yep.
But there's that guy, what is his name? Luther Cross.
Hmm.
I think I actually started following him because I think you shared something with him, or I can't remember, but he has like a ton of books. Like he has like a
Oh.
bunch, but they're all only Kindle as far as what I've seen. I'm just like,
Mhm.
man, I'm gonna have to get over it
There's
if
a
I want to
lot
read.
of I don't know if he only does Kindle, but like Chuck Tingle, he's like this. It's like a pen name, some guy that writes like comedy, romance, horror. I don't know. He just like, and that
Yeah.
dude makes like tons of money because he's just constantly pumping out these ridiculous books, and people love it. And he found the formula.
And it works for him, I
And it works
guess.
for him. And so you just never know. But I'm definitely the type of guy, like I like to have a physical. Um, I like both. I mean, if like I'll sometimes buy the ebook if I really like it, then I'll get a physical copy,
Yeah.
and then I end up having too many books. Um, but no, yeah, I'm excited. It'll be out November 30th,
Yeah.
and then I also have a Fright Vision book, which is a middle grade horror series, very similar to Goosebumps, that
Oh, okay.
I've already written, and it's with the editor right now, and it's book
Nice.
11 Yeah, it's book 11 in the series. I was invited to write it. I really like it. It came out really well, and that was September was when I finished it. So it's kind of in the works right now, and hopefully maybe by the new year it'll be ready to go. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But and then I'm starting on my next project, which hopefully will be a full-length novel. So
Okay.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like I'm excited to see Hunger for Death. And then I also put the other one on my calendar for the 17th. What was that one called?
Up. It's called From the Depths now. It used to
From
be
the
Up from
Depth.
the
That's the name
Depths.
of it. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one that was actually attached to the same publisher that I was working with. So they
Oh,
were given the rights back, and then they had to kind of redo the
okay.
whole thing. And it
Oh,
actually
okay.
includes a foreword by Ramsey Campbell, who's a like
Okay.
legendary horror writer, going way back. So we're all really excited about that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great authors in there, so we're pretty excited.
Cool.
Yeah, so definitely check that one out too. Up from the depth, From the Depths is what it's called.
From the Depths.
Yeah, depths.
Yeah.
I can never say that word. Depths.
Depths. Yeah.
So
Well, thanks for I don't know, taking time out to talk to me. I really liked, one of the things that kind of drew me to your book originally was just, and there's other authors I found this way too, that I really like people who interact, like people who are willing to engage and willing to, go back and forth or share or bounce ideas or movies off of each other, whatever. And I think that's kind of like what drew me to like checking out Scratches initially.
mhm.
And then I really enjoyed it. I'm really enjoying Severed. It's just taking me a lot longer to read this one. October is a really busy month for horror content creators.
Oh
I've
yeah,
been doing makeup effects and making messes in my garage, and like life has just been really crazy for the last couple weeks. But it should be about to slow down. So hopefully I'll be able to finish reading it soon. But I really do appreciate it.
yeah. Anytime. Like I said, I'm very new. I just started writing last year, so I'm really surprised when people are like, "Oh man, I'm honored you would come on my show," and I'm like a nobody. I'm like a dude from the
Yeah,
little
you
town
said
of
that. You
West
were like,
Gardner.
what did you say? You said, I'm a
I'm a
little
little
guy
guy.
too. That's
Yeah,
right.
like I'm not some friggin' Dean Koontz or something. So whenever anyone wants to interact or reach out,
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. And a lot of people like my books, some people don't, and that's name of the game. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
true.
nice when people reach out and
Yeah.
talk about it. And
Yeah.
it's great. So I'm always willing to do stuff like this. It's nice.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
definitely
definitely
appreciate you.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
appreciate having me on, even though you don't like A24 movies.
Look,
I guess I'll
it's not your favorite movie of all time. I think I can be forgiven this time.
No, you're good. You're good.
Plus, I like found footage. That gives me an immediate
Yeah.
pass.
Oh yeah. You go. You're still in the club. Don't worry. We're fam.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Well,
Cool.
cool. Well, thank you again for having me on, and I had
Yeah,
a great
thanks for
time. And
coming. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I look forward to sharing and watching the video and everything, and
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
get it out there.
Well, all right. Well, have a good weekend and happy Halloween.
You as well.
Only a few days away.
I know. Jesus, flown. I can't even believe it.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will chat with you soon.
All right. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Bye, Angel.
Bye.
So I was so ahead of the game with this video that I forgot to do an outro. This is my outro. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I love talking to people about horror movies, especially ones that they love and ones that are meaningful to them. It's always nice to interact with somebody that also loves found footage. Yeah, that's all I have for this one. This conversation, it was like a 2-hour conversation. So we took some bits and pieces Mike took some pieces out of it, that are going to be posted on social media. And then in January, when I launched the podcast options, the full episode will be available there. So, there will be more of my conversation with Joshua Marsella. But I'll be posting them periodically on the socials instead of, because YouTube, I'm not popular enough yet to be able to pull off like 2-hour videos. So, hope you guys loved talking and hanging out with us. And I'm sure we'll see him again in the future. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you in the next one.